The letter trembled in Katherine Miller's pale hands as the stagecoach rattled toward Santa Rosa, New Mexico territory. April 1879 had brought unexpected changes to her life, but nothing could have prepared her for the vast emptiness of the landscape stretching before her. The doctor back in Boston had warned that the southwestern climate might improve her lingering respiratory ailment, but he'd also cautioned that her constitution remained delicate. Now, as the coach hit another rut, sending pain shooting through her slight frame, she wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. The advertisement had seemed like providence at the time. Rancher seeks bride of good character and sturdy disposition. Comfortable home provided. Hugh Jensen hadn't specified he needed a woman strong enough to wrestle steers. But as Katherine studied her reflection in the small hand mirror, noting her hollow cheeks and the darkness beneath her blue eyes, she feared he would be sorely disappointed. The coach rolled to a stop in front of Santa Rosa's dusty Main Street. Katherine tucked the letter into her reticule and adjusted her bonnet. The journey had taken nearly 2 weeks, and her best traveling dress was wrinkled beyond repair. A far cry from the put-together young lady who had left Boston society behind. Santa Rosa. Last stop before nightfall, the driver called. Katherine gathered her meager belongings, one trunk containing her life's possessions, and accepted the driver's outstretched hand. Her legs wobbled beneath her as she stepped down, unaccustomed to solid ground after so many days of travel. "Miss Miller." The voice was deep and resonant, coming from a tall figure who stepped forward from the boardwalk. Katherine squinted against the setting sun, making out a broad-shouldered man with a weathered face partially obscured by several days' growth of beard. His hat was pulled low, but she could see keen hazel eyes studying her with undisguised concern. "Mr. Jensen?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the bustle of the station. He nodded, removing his hat. His hair was a rich brown, lighter at the ends where the sun had bleached it. "Welcome to Santa Rosa." There was an awkward silence as they regarded one another. Katherine knew what he was seeing: a woman too thin, too pale, with none of the robustness frontier life demanded. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but she recognized disappointment when she saw it. "Your trunk?" he asked finally. "Just the one," she replied, pointing to where the driver had set it down. Hugh Jensen hefted it easily with one hand as if testing its weight. "Traveling light." "I brought what I thought would be useful," Katherine said defensively. He nodded again, seemingly at a loss for words. "My wagon's this way. Town's not much, but it's growing. Got our own general store now and a proper church." Katherine followed him, conscious of her unsteady gait. The altitude made breathing difficult, and she struggled not to gasp for air. Her chest tightened painfully, and she paused to catch her breath. Hugh stopped and turned. "You all right, Miss Miller?" "Just adjusting to the air," she managed. "It's different from Boston." Something like alarm crossed his features. "Boston? You're from Boston?" "Yes. I mentioned it in my letter. You said back east. I figured Pennsylvania, maybe Virginia." "Not." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Boston's a long way from ranch country." They reached his wagon, a sturdy, well-maintained vehicle with 2 patient horses in harness. Hugh loaded her trunk and then stood awkwardly, clearly uncertain about how to help her up. Katherine gathered her skirts and attempted to climb unassisted, but her strength failed. Before she could fall, Hugh's hands were at her waist, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Thank you," she murmured, settling on the hard wooden seat. Hugh climbed up beside her, keeping a respectful distance. He clicked to the horses and they moved forward, leaving the small town behind. "It's about an hour to the ranch," he explained. "Good land, about 2,000 acres. Running 300 head of cattle now, hoping to expand next year." Katherine nodded, trying to show interest despite her growing apprehension. It sounds impressive. Took 8 years to build it up. Started with nothing but a claim and 20 head. There was pride in his voice. Got a proper house now. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, sitting room. Nothing fancy, but it's solid. They fell into silence as the wagon rolled through the rugged landscape. Katherine had never seen such emptiness, such wild beauty. In Boston, buildings crowded together and people filled every space. Here, the land stretched to the horizon, painted in shades of amber and rust beneath the vast blue sky. "Did you have family back in Boston?" Hugh asked finally. "No. My parents passed 3 years ago, influenza." Katherine's voice was steady. She'd had time to make peace with her loss. "I worked as a seamstress and occasionally as a tutor for children." Hugh's hands tightened on the reins. "In your letters, you mentioned being skilled at household management." "I am," Katherine assured him. "I managed our household after my mother died. I can cook, clean, keep accounts." "Ranch work is hard, Miss Miller." His tone was gentle but honest, especially for someone not raised to it. Katherine felt a flash of defiance. "I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Jensen." He glanced at her sidelong, taking in her frail appearance and the way she'd been breathless after walking mere steps. "With respect, madam, I'm not sure that's true." His bluntness stung, but Katherine couldn't fault him for it. "The doctor believes the dry air will improve my health. I've had respiratory troubles since childhood, but they've worsened in recent years." Hugh's expression darkened. "You didn't mention any health concerns in your letters." "Would you have responded if I had?" His silence was answer enough. The remainder of the journey passed in uncomfortable quiet. Katherine watched the landscape, trying to imagine making a life here. As the sun began to set, they crested a hill and Hugh pointed ahead. "There it is, Jensen Ranch." Katherine leaned forward, taking in the sight of a modest but well-built ranch house nestled in a small valley. A barn and several outbuildings stood nearby, with corrals and pastures spreading outward. Smoke curled from the chimney, and lamplight glowed in the windows. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Hugh's expression softened slightly. "My sister's staying with us for a few days. She's been helping get things ready for your arrival." As they approached, the front door opened and a woman emerged. She waved enthusiastically, and Hugh raised a hand in response. "That's Eliza," he explained. "Married a shopkeeper over in Las Cruces. She comes to visit when her husband's away on business." The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and Eliza rushed forward. She was a female version of Hugh, tall and sturdy, with the same hazel eyes, though her hair was a shade darker. "You must be Katherine. Welcome." Eliza's voice was warm and genuine. "I've been so looking forward to meeting you." Hugh jumped down and came around to help Katherine descend. This time, when his hands encircled her waist, Eliza's presence made the contact seem more proper, though no less disconcerting. "Thank you for your welcome," Katherine said, steadying herself against the wagon. Eliza's smile faltered briefly as she took in Katherine's appearance, but she recovered quickly. "You must be exhausted from your journey. Come inside, I've prepared supper, and your room is all made up." Katherine followed Eliza into the house, aware of Hugh retrieving her trunk behind them. The interior was simple but comfortable, with solid furniture and a few touches that spoke of a woman's influence: curtains at the windows, a braided rug before the hearth. "It's not much compared to Boston," Eliza said apologetically, "but Hugh's worked hard to make it a proper home." "It's wonderful," Katherine assured her, and meant it. After weeks of travel and years of rented rooms, the sturdy little house felt safe and welcoming. Supper was a quiet affair. Katherine managed only small portions of the hearty stew and cornbread Eliza had prepared, conscious of Hugh's watchful gaze. Her stomach had shrunk during the journey, and rich food now seemed overwhelming. "How long have you had the ranch, Mr. Jensen?" Katherine asked, attempting conversation. "Coming up on 9 years now," Hugh replied. "Came west after the war with not much more than the clothes on my back." "Hugh was in the Union Army," Eliza added proudly. "Cavalry," Katherine nodded. "My father supported the Union cause, though his health prevented him from enlisting." "The war feels like another lifetime," Hugh said, his expression distant. "Out here, we're building something new." After supper, Eliza showed Katherine to her room, a small but pleasant space with a narrow bed, washstand, and chest of drawers. Hugh had placed her trunk at the foot of the bed. "The bathroom is down the hall. We have a proper bathtub with a pump," Eliza explained. "Hugh installed it last year. Said any wife of his wouldn't be bathing in a tin tub by the fire." Katherine smiled weakly, wondering if she would ever truly be Hugh Jensen's wife. The disappointment in his eyes when he'd first seen her had been unmistakable. "Thank you for your kindness," she said. Eliza hesitated at the door. "Katherine, my brother is a good man, hard-working, honest. He deserves happiness. I'm sure he does. What I mean to say is—" Eliza paused, choosing her words carefully. "Ranch life isn't easy, especially for a woman. But if you're willing to try, Hugh will meet you more than halfway." After Eliza left, Katherine sank onto the bed, exhaustion overwhelming her. Through the thin walls, she could hear Hugh and Eliza talking in low voices in the kitchen. Though she couldn't make out the words, their concerned tones told her all she needed to know. She had 1 month, according to their agreement. 1 month to prove herself suitable as a rancher's wife, or return east with her passage paid. Looking down at her trembling hands, Katherine wondered if she'd made the journey for nothing. Morning came too quickly. Katherine woke to rooster crows and the smell of coffee. She dressed hurriedly in her plainest dress, determined to make a better impression than she had the previous evening. When she entered the kitchen, Eliza was at the stove, and Hugh was nowhere to be seen. "Good morning," Katherine said, smoothing her hair self-consciously. Eliza turned with a smile. "Good morning. How did you sleep?" "Very well, thank you." It wasn't entirely a lie the bed had been comfortable, even if her dreams had been troubled. "Hugh's already out checking the herd. He rises before dawn most days." Eliza set a plate of eggs and bacon on the table. "Eat up. You'll need your strength." Katherine sat and took small bites, willing her stomach to accept the rich food. "Is there anything I can help with this morning?" "Well," Eliza said carefully, "I thought I might show you around, help you get acquainted with how things run here." After breakfast, Eliza led Katherine on a tour of the ranch house, explaining the daily routines when bread was baked, how the laundry was managed, where supplies were stored. Katherine listened attentively, making mental notes and asking questions. "Hugh keeps the books there." Eliza pointed to a small desk in the corner of the sitting room. "He's good with figures, but I imagine he'd welcome your help. You mentioned in your letters that you're educated." "Yes," Katherine replied. "My father believed in education for both sons and daughters. I can read, write, and keep accounts." Eliza seemed pleased. "That's wonderful. Most women out here barely have basic schooling." They moved outside, where Eliza showed Katherine the kitchen garden, the chicken coop, and the smokehouse. The morning was cool, but the sun already promised heat. Katherine found herself breathless after just the short walk around the buildings. "Are you all right?" Eliza asked, noticing her pallor. "Just getting accustomed to the altitude," Katherine insisted, though she knew it was more than that. In the distance, a figure on horseback approached Hugh returning from his morning rounds. He dismounted gracefully and led his horse toward the barn, noticing them standing by the garden. "Morning," he called, tipping his hat. "We're just getting acquainted with the place," Eliza explained as he drew near. Hugh nodded, his eyes taking in Catherine's flushed face and the way she leaned slightly against the fence for support. "There's a storm brewing to the north. Might want to stay close to the house today." "I'll finish the washing then," Eliza said. "Catherine, would you like to help?" Washing proved more strenuous than Catherine had anticipated. The heavy wet linen seemed to weigh 100 pounds as she struggled to wring them out and hang them on the line. By midday, her arms ached and her breathing was labored, but she persisted, unwilling to admit defeat. Hugh appeared at lunchtime, watching silently as Catherine stretched to pin a sheet to the line. When it slipped from her grasp, he stepped forward, catching it before it hit the ground. Without a word, he hung it properly, his height making the task effortless. "Thank you," Catherine said, embarrassed. Hugh studied her for a moment. "You should rest." "I'm fine," she insisted. "No, you're not." His voice wasn't unkind, but it left no room for argument. "You're pushing yourself too hard. That won't help either of us." Catherine wanted to protest, but the world chose that moment to tilt alarmingly. Hugh's strong hands caught her arms, steadying her. "See," he said quietly. "Rest. That's an order." She allowed him to escort her to the house, where Eliza fussed over her, insisting she lie down. The humiliation burned worse than the fever Catherine could feel building behind her eyes. She slept through the afternoon and woke to find the promised storm had arrived. Rain lashed against the windows, and thunder rolled across the valley. Catherine rose unsteadily and made her way to the kitchen, determined not to miss supper as well. Eliza and Hugh were seated at the table, their conversation halting when she appeared. "You should be resting," Eliza scolded gently. "I've rested enough," Catherine replied, taking a seat. "I'm sorry to have been such poor company today." Hugh served her a bowl of stew, his movements careful. "Eliza tells me you did well with the washing before you took ill." The small praise warmed her. "I want to be useful." "Being useful doesn't mean working yourself to exhaustion," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. After supper, as Eliza cleared the dishes, Hugh turned to Catherine. "We need to talk about our arrangement." Her heart sank. "You want me to leave?" "I didn't say that." He rubbed his jaw, clearly uncomfortable. "But I need to be honest. When I advertised for a wife, I expected someone different." "Someone stronger," Catherine supplied. "Yes." His honesty was brutal but refreshing. "Running a ranch takes physical strength. There are days when everyone needs to pitch in during roundup, calving season when we're short-handed." Catherine nodded, fighting back tears. "I understand." "That said," Hugh continued, "I made an agreement. You're welcome to stay the month as we arranged. Maybe the air here will improve your health as your doctor suggested. And if it doesn't," Hugh met her gaze directly, "then I'll arrange your passage back east as promised." The following days established a pattern. Catherine woke early, determined to prove her worth, but limited herself to tasks within her strength: mending clothes, preparing simple meals, organizing the pantry. Hugh remained polite but distant, leaving before dawn and returning for meals, occasionally bringing ranch hands with him. Eliza departed after a week, hugging Catherine tightly and whispering, "Give him time. And give yourself time, too." Alone with Hugh, Catherine felt the weight of his disappointment more keenly. Their conversations were stilted, focused on practical matters. At night, she lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch, wondering if she would ever belong there. 2 weeks after her arrival, disaster struck. Catherine had ventured to the garden to gather vegetables for supper when a violent coughing fit overtook her. She dropped to her knees, struggling for breath as her lungs seemed to close. Darkness edged her vision and panic gripped her. Through the haze of her distress, she heard hoofbeats, then running footsteps. Strong arms lifted her, and Hugh's voice called her name, sharp with fear. She tried to respond but could only cough harder, tasting the metallic tang of blood. "Breathe, Katherine," Hugh urged, his arm supporting her shoulders. "Slow and easy, that's it." Gradually, the spasm passed, leaving her weak and trembling. When she could finally focus, she saw Hugh's face close to hers, his eyes dark with concern. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't apologize." His voice was gruff. "Can you stand?" With his help, she managed to get to her feet, but her legs wouldn't support her. Without hesitation, Hugh lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward the house as if she weighed nothing. "This is why I can't stay," Katherine said miserably, her head against his shoulder. "I'm too weak for this life." Hugh didn't respond until he'd brought her inside and settled her on the sofa. Then he knelt beside her, his expression troubled. "I'm sending for the doctor from town." "It won't help," she told him. "I've seen dozens of doctors. It's just how I am." "Humor me," he insisted, rising to fetch a glass of water. "Drink this." Small sips. Katherine obeyed, watching as Hugh moved efficiently around the kitchen, putting water on to boil and gathering clean cloths. He returned with a steaming cup of something fragrant. "Willow bark tea," he explained. "My mother swore by it." The bitter liquid soothed her raw throat, and Katherine found herself relaxing as Hugh settled into a chair opposite her. For once, he didn't seem in a hurry to return to his work. "You have questions," she said finally. Hugh nodded slowly. "Your illness, is it consumption?" "No," Katherine was grateful she could answer truthfully. "The doctors believe it's a weakness of the lungs exacerbated by the Boston climate. Some called it chronic bronchitis, others asthmatic fits. Whatever the name, it's been with me since childhood. And there's no cure. They recommended the dry air of the West. That's partly why I answered your advertisement." She attempted a smile. "Though I admit, I didn't anticipate ranch work would be quite so strenuous." Hugh's expression softened. "I should have been clearer in my letters." "As should I," Katherine admitted. A comfortable silence fell between them. Outside, the ranch hands were calling to each other as they finished the day's work. The familiar sounds of cattle lowing in the distance drifted through the open window. "I want to stay," Katherine said suddenly. "Even if it's not as your wife. Perhaps I could be useful in other ways, teaching the local children perhaps, or keeping the books for the ranch." Hugh studied her intently. "Is that what you want, to be my employee rather than my wife?" The question caught her off guard. I don't know. I just know I don't want to return to Boston. There's nothing for me there." Before Hugh could respond, a knock at the door announced the doctor's arrival. Hugh ushered in a portly, white-haired man who introduced himself as Dr. Wilson. "So you're the Boston bride," he said kindly, setting his bag on the table. "Let's have a look at you, young lady." Hugh excused himself to tend to the evening chores while Dr. Wilson examined Katherine. The doctor listened to her breathing, checked her pulse, and asked numerous questions about her medical history. "Well," he said finally, "your lungs sound congested, but not seriously so. The dry air here should help, though the dust can be problematic initially. I'll leave you some powders to ease the coughing." "Is there anything that would make her stronger?" Hugh asked from the doorway, startling them both. Dr. Wilson considered. "Good nutrition, gentle exercise, fresh air. No magic cures, I'm afraid, but she's young. The body has remarkable healing capabilities." After the doctor left, Hugh prepared a simple supper while Katherine rested. They ate in companionable silence, the awkwardness of earlier days temporarily set aside. "Dr. Wilson thinks I might improve," Katherine ventured. "I heard." Hugh pushed his plate away. "Katherine, I need to confess something." She tensed, waiting when you arrived. "I was disappointed. I saw a woman who might not survive her first winter here, let alone help build the future I envisioned." The words hurt, but Katherine nodded. That's fair. But these past weeks, I've watched you try. Every day you push yourself a little more. You never complain, even when I know you're in pain. Hugh's eyes met hers. That takes a different kind of strength, one I didn't recognize at first. Katherine felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with her illness. Thank you for seeing that. I'm not offering false hope, Hugh cautioned. Ranch life is hard and it may never be suitable for your health. But if you want to stay as we originally agreed, I'm willing to give our arrangement a fair chance. As husband and wife, Katherine asked carefully. In name at first, Hugh replied honestly. The rest, well, we'd have to see how things develop. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was more than Katherine had dared hope for. I'd like that. The next morning, Katherine woke feeling stronger than she had in days. The doctor's powders had eased her cough, and a full night's sleep had restored some color to her cheeks. When she entered the kitchen, Hugh was already there, brewing coffee. Good morning, she said. He turned, surprise registering on his face. You're up early. I thought I might make breakfast, Katherine offered. Nothing elaborate, just biscuits and eggs. Hugh hesitated, then nodded. I'd appreciate that. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, Hugh showing her where things were kept, Katherine mixing batter for biscuits. When his hand accidentally brushed hers as they reached for the same cup, neither pulled away immediately. I was thinking, Hugh said as they sat down to eat. There's a small desk in the sitting room that's going unused. If you'd like to take over the bookkeeping, it would be a help, Katherine smiled. I'd enjoy that. And perhaps, he added cautiously, when you're feeling stronger, you might help with the kitchen garden. It's been neglected since my mother passed. I'd like that very much. I've always enjoyed gardening, though I had little opportunity in the city. Hugh nodded, seeming satisfied. We'll take it slowly. No more incidents like yesterday. The arrangement proved beneficial for them both. Katherine found purpose in keeping the ranch books, organizing them more efficiently than Hugh ever had. She spent mornings at the desk by the window, afternoons resting or tending to the small garden she was gradually expanding. Hugh, freed from paperwork he detested, had more time for the ranch itself. As April gave way to May, Katherine's health gradually improved. The coughing fits became less frequent, and she gained a little weight, her face filling out. The high desert air, as the doctor had predicted, seemed to agree with her. Their relationship evolved more slowly. Hugh remained reserved, though Katherine occasionally caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite interpret. They spent evenings together, Hugh reading the newspaper while Katherine sewed or wrote letters to the few acquaintances she'd left behind in Boston. One evening, as thunderstorms threatened again, Hugh brought in an armful of firewood and found Katherine at the stove, stirring a pot of beef stew. "Smells good," he said, stacking the wood by the hearth. "My mother's recipe," Katherine replied, "though I had to substitute local ingredients." Hugh washed his hands, then hesitated before asking, "Would you tell me about your family? Your life before?" The request surprised her. Until now, they'd spoken little of personal matters. "There's not much to tell," she said, but began the story anyway of growing up the only child of a bookbinder and his wife, of education and modest comfort, of the epidemic that had taken both parents within a week of each other. Hugh listened attentively, asking occasional questions. When she finished, he shared his own history, born in Illinois to farming parents, a difficult childhood as the eldest of 6, service in the Union Cavalry, and the journey west after the war ended. "Eliza was the only one who followed me," he explained. "The others thought I was chasing a fool's dream. But you proved them wrong," Katherine observed, looking around the comfortable kitchen. "Not entirely," Hugh admitted. There were years when I nearly starved, when drought or rustlers nearly broke me. I wrote home telling everyone how well I was doing, but the truth was far different. Something about the firelight and the storm building outside made confession easier. They talked long into the evening, revealing pieces of themselves that had remained hidden. As May turned to June, Catherine's strength continued to improve. She could now walk to the barn and back without becoming winded, and her hands had grown steady enough to manage more complex household tasks. Hugh noticed her progress, offering quiet encouragement. Their wedding date, the end of their trial month, had come and gone without discussion. Neither mentioned it, but both were aware of the unresolved question between them. Were they truly husband and wife now, or merely convenient partners? The answer came unexpectedly. One morning in mid-June, Catherine rose early, inspired to bake bread while the day was still cool. As she kneaded dough on the kitchen table, Hugh entered, already dressed for the day's work. "You're up early," he observed, pouring coffee. "I wanted to surprise you with fresh bread," Catherine replied, blowing a strand of hair from her face. Hugh watched her for a moment, then set down his cup. Without warning, he crossed to where she stood, reached out one calloused hand, and gently tucked the wayward lock behind her ear. The simple touch sent warmth coursing through Catherine. She looked up, flour-covered hands stilling on the dough, and found Hugh's eyes dark with an emotion she hadn't seen before. "Catherine," he said, his voice rough, "I think it's time we talked about our arrangement." Her heart sank. Despite her improvements, she was still not the strong ranch wife he'd advertised for. "You want me to leave?" "No." The word was fierce, almost angry. "That's not what I want at all." Catherine held her breath as Hugh struggled to find words. "These past weeks," he began, "watching you fight to find your place here, seeing your determination despite everything, it's changed how I see things, how I see you." "I'm still not strong enough for ranch work," she pointed out, needing honesty between them. "No," Hugh agreed, "not in the way I thought I needed, but you have strength here." He touched her chest lightly, just above her heart, where it matters most. The gesture left a flowery fingerprint on her dress, but Catherine didn't care. "What are you saying, Hugh?" "I'm saying I don't want a business arrangement anymore. I want a real marriage with you." He hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "If that's what you want too." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "It is very much." Hugh's hands, strong, work-hardened hands that could break a wild horse, but now touched her with exquisite gentleness, framed her face. Slowly, giving her every chance to withdraw, he lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a demand. When Catherine responded, rising on tiptoe and sliding her flour-covered hands to his shoulders, Hugh's restraint crumbled. He gathered her close, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. When they finally parted, Hugh rested his forehead against hers. "I should have done that weeks ago." "Yes," Catherine agreed, smiling through her tears. "You should have." That evening they sat on the porch swing Hugh had built the previous summer, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. Catherine's head rested against Hugh's shoulder, his arm secure around her. "I've been thinking," Hugh said, his voice a rumble beneath her ear. "The house needs work if we're to make it a proper home." "Oh," Catherine looked up at him. "What did you have in mind?" "Indoor plumbing for a start, a real bathroom, and maybe," he hesitated, "a larger bedroom. Or perhaps another bedroom for the future." The implication wasn't lost on Catherine. "Children, if you want them, if your health permits." Hugh's arm tightened around her. "I won't risk losing you. Dr. Wilson says there's no reason I couldn't have children, especially as my health improves." Catherine had asked the doctor during his last visit, a tentative hope building within her. "But yes, I want them. With you." Hugh's kiss was answer enough. That night, for the first time, they truly became husband and wife. Hugh was gentle, patient, whispering words of love and reassurance as they discovered each other. Katherine, who had feared her frailty would disappoint him in this aspect of marriage as well, found instead that her responsiveness delighted him. Afterward, lying in the circle of Hugh's arms, Katherine felt a peace she had never known. "I never thought I would find this," she confessed. "Find what?" Hugh asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Belonging. A place where my weaknesses don't define me." Hugh propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her seriously. "You're not weak, Katherine. You never were. It just took me a while to see your strength." The summer passed in a haze of happiness. Katherine continued to improve, gaining weight and color, though she still tired more easily than other women. Hugh hired additional help for the ranch, ensuring Katherine never felt pressured to take on work beyond her capabilities. In July, they traveled to Las Cruces to visit Eliza, who embraced Katherine as a true sister. "I knew you were right for him," she whispered. "He just needed time to see it." Hugh overheard and smiled. "My sister always did think she was smarter than me." "And I always was," Eliza retorted, making them all laugh. By August, Katherine had transformed the neglected kitchen garden into a thriving plot that produced more vegetables than they could eat. Hugh built a small greenhouse attached to the south side of the house, ensuring she could continue gardening through the milder New Mexico winters. "You found your calling," he observed one evening as they enjoyed a meal featuring her fresh produce. "One of them," Katherine agreed, thinking of the ledgers she kept meticulously, saving the ranch considerable money through her careful accounting. In September, as the first hints of autumn touched the landscape, Katherine missed her monthly courses. Dr. Wilson confirmed what she had begun to suspect: she was with child, due in the spring. Hugh's reaction was a mixture of joy and concern. "Are you sure you're strong enough?" he asked, holding her hands tightly. "No," Katherine admitted honestly. "But I want this child, Hugh, our child. Dr. Wilson will monitor me closely and will take every precaution." Hugh gathered her into his arms, his cheek against her hair. "We'll face it together, whatever comes." The pregnancy proved challenging. Morning sickness plagued Katherine well into her second trimester, and the winter months confined her mostly to the house. Hugh hovered anxiously, insisting on hiring a young woman from town to help with household chores. "You need to rest," he told Katherine firmly when she protested the expense. "The ranch is doing well. We can afford it." In truth, the ranch was thriving, partly due to Katherine's efficient management of their finances. Hugh had expanded his herd and purchased additional grazing land, establishing Jensen Ranch as one of the more prosperous operations in the territory. Christmas came, bringing a rare snowfall that transformed the landscape. Hugh surprised Katherine with a rocking chair he'd secretly commissioned from a carpenter in Santa Rosa. "For when the baby comes," he explained, watching as she ran her hands over the smooth wood. Katherine's gift to him was a new ledger, bound in leather with Jensen Ranch embossed in gold on the cover. "For our growing enterprise," she said. Hugh kissed her tenderly. "The best investment I ever made was answering your letter." As Katherine's pregnancy progressed, so did her integration into the community. The pastor's wife, Mrs. Patterson, became a particular friend, visiting often and bringing books from her husband's extensive library. Through her, Katherine met other ranch wives and townswomen, gradually building connections that eased the isolation of ranch life. In early April 1880, almost exactly a year after Katherine's arrival in Santa Rosa, she went into labor. The birth was difficult and prolonged, taxing her already compromised strength. Hugh paced outside their bedroom while Dr. Wilson and two neighbor women attended her, his face etched with fear each time her cries reached him. After 18 grueling hours, their son was born a robust, healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's hazel eyes. Katherine, exhausted beyond measure, managed a weak smile as Hugh was finally allowed into the room. "Meet your son," she whispered as the baby was placed in his arms. Hugh stared down at the tiny face in wonder, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks. "He's perfect," he said, his voice breaking. Then, looking at Katherine's pale face, "And you, are you all right?" "Tired," she admitted, "but happy. So happy." Dr. Wilson interjected, his tone serious. "She needs rest, Hugh, complete rest. The birth was harder on her than most." Hugh nodded, gently returning the baby to Katherine's arms before kneeling beside the bed. "You've given me everything," he told her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Now rest and get strong, we need you." Recovery was slow. For weeks, Katherine could barely leave her bed, relying on the hired girl and visiting neighbors to care for the baby while she regained her strength. Hugh divided his time between the ranch and the sick room, often bringing paperwork to her bed so they could work together. "We should name him," Katherine said one afternoon as they watched the baby sleep in the cradle Hugh had crafted. "I've been thinking about that," Hugh admitted. "What about Matthew? After your father," Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "You remembered." "I remember everything you tell me." Hugh took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Matthew Jensen. It has a good sound." By June, Katherine was well enough to sit on the porch, baby Matthew in her arms as she watched Hugh work with the horses in the corral. Her strength was returning more slowly this time, and Dr. Wilson had warned her that another pregnancy might prove dangerous. "Some women aren't built for childbearing," he'd said bluntly. "You've got a fine son. Maybe that's enough." The possibility of no more children brought a pang of sadness, but as Katherine looked down at Matthew's sleeping face, she felt profound gratitude for what she had. Hugh joined her on the porch, wiping sweat from his brow. "How are my two favorite people?" "Enjoying the view," Katherine replied, smiling up at him. "That new stallion is coming along nicely." Hugh sat beside her, his arm automatically going around her shoulders. "Dr. Wilson stopped by the corral on his way out, said you're improving but slower than he'd like." Katherine nodded. "He told me another baby might be unwise." Hugh's arm tightened. "Then there won't be another." "You always wanted a large family," Katherine reminded him. "You told me that early on. I want you more." Hugh's voice was firm. "Matthew is a blessing I never expected." "If he's our only child, that's God's will." Katherine leaned against him, the baby cradled between them. "I love you, Hugh Jensen." "And I love you, Katherine Jensen." He kissed the top of her head. "Your strength amazes me every day." As summer turned to fall, Katherine continued to recover. By Matthew's first birthday, she was able to manage the household again, though she still tired easily. Hugh remained protective, insisting she rest whenever needed and hiring additional help during busy seasons. The years passed, bringing changes to both the ranch and their family. Matthew grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's gentle nature and his father's love of the land. Though Katherine's health remained delicate, the New Mexico climate proved beneficial overall, her respiratory attacks becoming increasingly rare. In 1883, against Dr. Wilson's advice but with Hugh's reluctant blessing, Katherine became pregnant again. The pregnancy was carefully monitored, with Hugh insisting she rest far more than she had with Matthew. To everyone's relief, their daughter Elizabeth arrived safely, the birth easier than her brother's had been. "She looks just like you," Hugh marveled, gazing down at the infant with her fair hair and blue eyes. "Poor child," Katherine teased, stronger this time though still confined to bed. "Beautiful child," Hugh corrected, kissing her softly. "Like her mother." As their children grew, so did the ranch. By 1890, Jensen Ranch was among the largest operations in the territory, employing several hands year-round and more during Roundup. The original house had been expanded twice, now boasting indoor plumbing throughout, a large kitchen where Katherine often taught Matthew and Elizabeth to bake, and a dedicated office where she managed the ranch accounts. Katherine never became the robust ranch wife Hugh had initially advertised for. She couldn't ride out with the hands during Roundup or help with calving. But her contributions managing the ranch's finances, maintaining their home, nurturing their children, and supporting Hugh through every challenge proved far more valuable than physical strength alone could have been. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Hugh presented Katherine with a locket containing miniature photographs of Matthew and Elizabeth. "The greatest gifts you've given me," he said as he fastened it around her neck. Katherine touched it reverently, then reached into her pocket. "I have something for you too." She handed him a small wooden box. Inside lay a silver pocket watch engraved with the words, "To Hugh, whose strength sustained us both, with eternal love, Katherine." Hugh's eyes misted as he read the inscription. "It was never my strength that mattered," he said, drawing her close. "It was always yours, the strength of your heart." As they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, watching their children play beneath the vast New Mexico sky, Katherine reflected on the journey that had brought her there. From frail Boston seamstress to beloved wife, mother, and ranch mistress, a transformation made possible by a man who had learned to see beyond physical limitations to the strength that truly mattered. "No regrets?" Hugh asked softly, seeming to read her thoughts. Katherine smiled up at him, her heart full. "Not one." The sun set behind the mountains, painting the ranch in golden light as another day ended at Jensen Ranch, a testament to perseverance, to love, and to the unexpected strength that can be found in the human heart.